So let's just kick it off. So Beth, how
Well,
long have you been in construction and design?
that's actually a funny question. I got pulled into real estate by Michael. And just like being a woman, kind of quickly found a niche helping out his male builders.
Hmm.
That was probably back in 2014 when the market was still was still pretty hot, especially in 77018. Definitely a lot of inventory that they still need to get through that kind of like first softening, or like kind of the way I see it is more of a correction that 77018 more specifically went through. And just hearing, his builder or his clients like kind of complain about some of the things that we were seeing, and then some of the challenges that I was facing, helping him facilitate, their representation. So by default, I've been in it since about 2015.
Okay.
Um, but I've always been a homebody, and I have a very artist heart mother. And so, home has always been something that I've been drawn to. We were always doing things in my room and finding the perfect bedspread and new curtains and, updating it as I kind of changed and evolved as a kid too. So it's, I've been interested in it for a long time.
So I don't want to say you like fell
Mhm.
into it, like, but
But certainly did.
kind of sounds, yeah. I mean, it sounds like you
Yeah.
fell. So there, so then before you were like in this world, like this is your
Yeah.
career. Was there anything from your like middle school, elementary school, high school, growing up, like, being in the 20s, where you just were had this dream to be doing what you're doing now, or did it really just
Never.
happen
It
organically?
just really kind of happened organically. I mean, I have a sociology degree, which is, sorry, Dad, worthless. But I actually find it quite, and it's like good in real life skills. Not that I think that college really, is good, necessarily teaches you things for life. Then I worked in advertising and print advertising for a magazine company for a hot second out of college. And then I worked in dental. Like, you know. But like I said, I've always had a love for homes.
Love it.
So
Cool.
yeah.
Well, it's you're definitely on a lot of people's radars. Just y'all's aesthetic, your ability with your eye, just the product itself, not just the construction, the way you guys go about it, but it's beautiful stuff. It's art.
Thank
You know my background as an artist,
you.
and I think everybody has the ability to tap into that creative side. And I think people, if you're a lawyer, you're a plumber, you're in insurance, you're in construction, people don't, the next thing people think about when you hear these things is not art necessarily,
Right,
right? But there's
right.
still creative aspects to each one of those jobs that I think if
Yeah,
you're lucky enough to tap into and figure out a way to make your business work and you get to be creative, then I think you're just going to have more fucking fun. So,
yeah.
okay, well, so I've thrown a scenario at you before. I've had this experience myself with you. I'm a homeowner. Uh,
Hmm.
I like my home. I like the location. I like the I don't want to move, right? I don't want to go
Yeah,
anywhere. But
yeah.
and my home is not even necessarily old. It's like, let's say it's a
Right.
5-year-old house at best, but just everything about it. I'm like, I want to knock down this wall. I want new countertops. I want new cabinets. Um, is that your ideal client? Like somebody who wants to change everything about their home? Or is it somebody that only wants to build new construction? Like
Yeah,
who are the people that should be coming to you in general? Like who should be coming in?
yeah. That's a great question. Harvard's avatar, if you will, in this world of, digital and social media, like who's kind of the avatar? And the avatar is like the urban family. And, what does that look like for Harvard? And it isn't necessarily someone who's just wanting new construction, and it isn't necessarily someone who lives in an all original at 12,000, 1,200 square feet and they need 2,500 square feet. Our avatar really is this urban family that's like, hey, this is the need that I have. This is what I'm hoping to achieve. And then Harvard kind of backs into it from a market standpoint. And I think that, our integration with Happen Houston and the advisors there have really kind of helped us compound our success in a really short period of time. Because, for the person, let's say that they live in a 5-year-old semi-production build. We all know what those are. There's a couple of them in the neighborhood, I'm sure that everyone could think of offhand, that the construction quality is there, that the floor plan works, but it lacks absolutely zero punch.
Okay.
Um, is that person necessarily an ideal client for Harvard? No, because what they need is someone to teach them how to make their home reflect who they are. And I think this is also where there's a little bit of void in, the design world as well, because, designers get these big contracts like big home builders do, and these smaller odd and in between jobs are hard. And so where the digital world has really been good, there's several different, upload a picture to your room and we'll give you the links, but there's like no personality to it. That person isn't necessarily drawn to Harvard. I would love to be able to kind of differentiate us and be able to kind of have that access, but really who the target Harvard client is someone who is wanting new construction because they have been able to identify exactly the area that they're really wanting to be in and the community that they want to be involved in. And so if it's a new construction product because of price point, then obviously we are able to fill the void of the design need and construction. And then if there's somebody that is in unoriginal, or a semi-original, that's, very small, and they don't need 4,000 plus square feet because they love their neighbors and they love their block and they have some good equity built into their house, being able to have us approach the construction from the back end. So it's like, hey, let's not, pour $700,000 into this house that you'll never be able to get out of it, but let's find where that middle ground is. Let's get a floor plan that is more cohesive to your desires in a home and still meet those numbers from the back end. It's not just it's not square peg round hole type thing, and it's not necessarily just one. Like I said, it's really that urban family that needs some true guidance. I've seen so many people do bad remodel jobs or to make improvements to their home that I just am like, wow, it would have probably been way more fun for you to light $75,000 on fire than to do that, because not one person's going to give two shits about that thing that you just did.
Sure.
Or that they get so held on to the improvements that they want to take the light fixture with them. And I'm like, no, leave the fucking light fixture. Like, the light fixture is what drew them in. You take the light fixture out and you just have a green room. Like, nobody cares about that. So really kind of helping them guide and understand, is more of the target, the avatar for Harvard, someone who is really looking for guidance in the project.
Okay.
A lot of our families are really trusting and have been able to identify the more hands-off approach to construction and design that Harvard offers, and those are more of the target. The busy working family, whether it's mom or dad leading the charge, I've seen both, but really ensuring that they trust that I have the vision and that I can execute it. And I really feel like our track record in 77018 has kind of been able to show that. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a neighbor. Like, I want to be able to live and perform in each of those areas of my life very differently. And I need my house to also do that same thing too.
Yeah.
So that's, it's interesting to see what people think they need, and then listening to what it is that they are actually lacking. Those two things, bridging the gap, I think is really hard in our industry.
Okay. You said something there a second ago. So talking about people just going off and
Yeah.
updating their home themselves. what are some of the not necessarily stories to tell about it, but
Yeah.
what is some decent advice you can give to somebody who's thinking like, well, I just want to change this. I just want to change that. Like, what are some mistakes you can save them from making if they're just going to go ahead and do some small changes here and there
Yeah.
at home?
I mean, I think that if you are a DIYer, more power to you. Let me tell you, as someone who owns and operates a construction company, I don't DIY shit. You know what
Okay.
I DIY? Hi, this is Beth Silva. This is the thing that I'm needing happened. Can you go for it? So
Yeah.
if you are a DIYer, then I think that there are some improvements that you can certainly make. Where I think people go wrong is they just make improvements without actually seeking out data and advice. I would never make an improvement to our home without asking Michael, does this even, like, is this improvement backed by data?
Yeah.
And so let's say that you and I are DIYers and we say, okay, honey, let's gut the kitchen this week and let's go to Home Depot and let's get some, or let's do the IKEA PAX system because I see it all over Pinterest. It looks really good, and let's just sink 75,000 into redoing our kitchen. Kitchens, yes, are very good updates to make. But if I go to IKEA and I buy a purple PAX kitchen because that's what I'm really into, no one's
Mm,
gonna give a shit that I spent $75,000 on a purple kitchen. So it's like, but can you? And the thing is like when you made the change, did you actually improve the solution? If you just updated it, there are so many other ways to update. So I'll give you an example. If you're in, let's say, anywhere from 1975 to a 1995 build, and the layout of the kitchen is good, but the cabinet fronts are kind of, the hinges could use some work. Let's say the appliances, maybe they're white appliances. But for the most part, the location of each of the things really work. Well, just updating the cabinet fronts and repainting is a better use of dollars than gutting the kitchen and going back with the same thing that's already present.
sure.
You know, just because the appliances are white doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but it's like if you're going to paint the cabinets in the kitchen black, but you're not willing to get new white appliances, like don't do that either, because that's not really, those things aren't dollar to dollar. So before I would suggest anyone to make any improvements, I would all like large dollar improvements. And what I consider large dollar is really anything over 75,000.
Okay.
Um, I would ask a very competent agent, hey, can you show me some data? Like if I put an additional 75 into my home, what does that look like from a numbers perspective? However, low dollar changes that I think everybody should make, honestly, if you have young kids, kind of in the 5 to 7 year range, if you're not going to move, is paint.
Okay.
Paint does a world of change. Now, it is relatively, you know, disruptive because really the paint that needs to happen is sanding of the baseboards and door trims from where tiny bodies and the things that tiny bodies carry, bang up against where it kind of looks like everyone went through your house with the, chain and just whacked it all around, taking and making those touch ups and then painting all of the woodwork, all of the walls, and all of the ceilings. I can't tell you, I think that a fresh coat of paint is the best money spent always. Then other really easy things are light fixtures,
Right.
hardware, things that don't really require a really technical licensed individual. Now, again, I'm not changing out a light fixture, but it is relatively easy to get an electrician to come and swap out a light. And
Yeah.
those little things are also easy to change as trends change. Like when kind of the mid-century Sputnik, style fixture was really popular, as that starts to fade, it's much easier to spend a couple $100 on a new fixture than it's be like, well, I gotta move. I gotta move. I gotta redo the whole room. I have this button and fixture. You're like, okay, slow down here. Like we could just switch out the light fixture and gone a totally different way. So those little things are also really great. And like I said, some of those like smaller track builders, that have every house has the same floor plan, the same color, the same cabinet, the same hardware. You can really make your house stand out by making changes inside, like hardware, paint, and light, that really make it stand apart and doesn't look so much like copy, paste, repeat down the way.
And to your point, it doesn't break the bank, and it's also easy to switch out. Like you're going to put the home on the market, let's repaint the walls, get it back to neutral. Let's take our designer light fixtures that we're so in love with us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that makes sense. And then
Yeah.
to your other point, when you say data, I think what you mean is most people are not currently living in the last home they're ever going to live in. They're
Correct.
likely to sell it. And when they start thinking about making these, whether it's paint, hardware, light fixtures, if they go beyond that, they want to make countertop changes, structural changes. I don't think, or we know most people are not thinking about, well, when I eventually sell this house, am I
Yeah.
making good decisions right now? Or
Right.
am I making
Yeah.
decisions that will help me on market? Or am I just doing what I want to do without any information, like no sort of foresight at all? And
Yeah.
it's like a big question mark. And then to your point again, it's like you get on market and it's like, well, why doesn't everybody like my purple kitchen?
It's like, sorry, your purple kitchen wasn't vibing. Elton is, the Elton vibe is next. And the thing is too, is that, there are certain things, like let's say that you have tropical brown countertops and you're ready to get into the current. You know, yes, there are definitely marbles kind of trend in and out, quartz is kind of trend in and out, but what doesn't trend in and out is like the neutral color palette. Yes, I understand that like browns and taupes and golds are a lot, more prevalent than maybe the whites and cooler colors of gray, but nobody usually walks into a space and says, this kitchen has white subway backsplash. We got to rip it out. Like, no, they're like, okay,
Mhm.
I can work with this. Like, this is a blank slate. And so it's like, if you are going to make some decisions, like go to the class, like when in doubt, go classic. Heights bungalows that have all of those classic tiles, they're not back in style now. They never really went out of style. Yes, people weren't using them as often, but they never went out of style. And so, I think that really making, if you're nervous, making some really sound, solid, like just classic selections is really where you can't go wrong,
Yeah.
Um, if you're gonna do a white subway, like maybe try a bevel. Like,
Okay.
okay, you still have a white subway tile, but it's not just the same subway tile that you see, everywhere else. But I think that, more than anything, what pains me the most is when I walk up to a house and then I walk inside the house and I'm like, all right, that took a turn. This is not what I was expecting in here. And what do I mean by that? It's like if you have this kind of cool mid-century ranch in Shepherd Park Plaza, and then you walk in and it's like hand scraped beams and like dark rustic hardwoods. I'm like, so now we're in a farmhouse?
Okay.
Like I understood ranch, but we didn't really transition very well.
In
I'm
other words, the house has like an identity crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even let's say that they do compute inside to outside, but just looking around, I'm like, who lives here? Because there's just like no personality. It's just a home with stuff in it. I'm like, okay, because it's so funny. I had one of my son's moms was like, you can't come over. My couch is disgusting and I don't want you to judge me. And I was like, oh, girl, I'm not going to be judging you for your couch. I'm going to be looking at your kitchen and your faucet and your light fixtures. And she was just dying laughing. And, it's like, and then so somebody else will be like, oh, well, can you come and tell me what to do in this room? And I'm like, well, what do you want to do in the room? I don't live here. Like, why do you care what I like? And I think that like being able to walk into somebody's house and really kind of identifying and like feeling who the family is or who the person is or who the people are, like that to me matters more than is it current? Is it on trend? Is it what I like? I'm like, who cares what I like? I don't live here, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I
so
love
yeah.
that. So then when you have a new project, whether it's a renovation or just a full-blown new construction, and you have that like freedom to
Yeah.
put, your fingerprint on it, where do you get inspiration from? Like, and are there any like not obvious things that you might do to get inspiration?
The stage of life that I'm in, I don't have the luxury of traveling as much as I would certainly like to and kind of getting away. I mean, I have two boys, 5 and 7, and so we're just a little bit of a hands-on stage of life. But, so I really get into some deep dive rabbit holes on the internet
Okay.
and have been able to prompt my searches to deliver me the images that I'm searching for. And I take a lot of inspiration from other designers. Um, just like the consumer and also keep a close eye on horror. I really like to kind of see what comes up. I like to see what pins. I like to kind of understand, like, okay, why did that house go under contract at $1 million, in this section? And but for the most part, like I really do. I've also had the luxury of living in several houses myself. Michael and I have been married 10 years. We are in our fifth house. So the joke is that, when I want to try something new, we move.
Okay.
But that also is kind of true because there are certain things that before I will suggest it to a client that I want to know, like, how did how did this how did this perform? Like, how did I like it? Um, but also, because I've lived in 5 houses, I've also, done some things wrong, seen some things. I've went from having no kids to having itty bitty babies to having very mobile toddlers to now having more like rough and tumble boys. And, what are the things, when you're in certain stages of life, it just feels like you're there forever. But
Yeah.
then the next thing you know, you're out of it, and so not pigeonholing my house to one phase of life that my kids have been in, because I have been in the same house at certain different phases, and just kind of comparing, contrasting. But kind of go back to where it is that I draw inspiration. I mean, honestly, the internet. I do a lot of scrolling on all sorts of platforms too.
And it sounds like you almost test some of your design ideas with your own houses.
With my own houses, but also that's the beauty of having the mix of spec home.
Yeah.
When I try some of these things in the specs, you know, I get firsthand feedback from the consumer.
Right.
And that's such a luxury to be able to have those guinea pigs and also still be able to really kind of flex more of that, um, personalization in a custom. It's really hard to go crazy in like kids' bathrooms because it's like, is it two boys? Is it two girls? Is it a girl and boy? Is it a 5 and a 12-year-old? Like, those are two different. So it's a little bit harder to do that. But I mean, the spec is really where I'm able to guinea pig most of, um, whether it's floor plan design, whether it's amenity, sorry, of course I'm getting a call on this, whether it's amenities, we've all seen, oh, this is a cool drawer insert on Pinterest. Does that really work? Until you try it, you don't really know.
So when you're in this process and you're getting to be creative, anybody who follows Harvard, I'm sure by now notices you guys kind of like do a poppy thing, or at
Yeah,
least from my take is the most the flair, right? Kind of shows
yeah,
up in the powder bath, right?
yeah.
Is that kind of your uh is that your I don't want to say like favorite room to design, but is that kind of your designated, this is where I'm going to experiment sort of area, or are there other parts of the home that you typically enjoy the process of working on more than others?
Yeah, the powder bath is the gateway drug.
Okay.
Um, so, you know, it's usually a small room
Hmm.
and it is a place that people are usually more open to be punchy because it's a powder bathroom and their guests see it. And so they like that. But it's a total gateway drug. Like it is the gateway to all the things. So I definitely start with the powder bath because that's usually where most people are comfortable. My clients that have worked with me before are like, give me more of that. You know, I started with the powder bath and they're like, okay, and now I want to do something in my, you know, my boys' room, and now I want to do something in my dining room, and now I want to do something here. And so, you know, I do start with that because it's the smallest commitment
Sure.
with the biggest statement because most everybody that comes to your house sees your powder bathroom.
Yes.
So, um, but I mean, if you came to my personal home, I mean, I'm wild. Like I don't care. I move things around all the time, whether it be furniture, art. My mom, it stresses her out. Like
Mm.
I was asking her opinion one day at our last house on Sue Barnett about what she thought about this piece of art. And she's like, you have art on every wall in that room. And I was like, oh, good thing it's not your house. As I just like hammer the nail into the wall. So
Right.
I mean, in my house, I'm like, I don't care. I have crazy wild wallpaper in my dining room, and everyone's like, well, how'd you come up with that? I was like, well, I just liked it. They're like, well, what if you get sick of it? I was like, I'll change it. Like, why does everything in a home have to be so permanent? You know, like it's okay. Think about the stages and the way that your family cycles through life. Like, why can't your room or your house
Hmm.
cycle in that same way without having to move? You
Right.
know, it's just wallpaper, it's just paint. Yes, it's kind of a pain in the ass, like in the short couple of days, but like, isn't labor kind of a pain in the ass for a little bit? You know, what's the result? The result's a new room, you know, that you're refreshed by, that you're excited about. Like, you know, I don't know. As a homebody, like I love being at home because it's the place that I just get filled up, you know? I love to dine, I love to go on dates, I like to go to the park with my boys, like, it is fun. It's also cool to, like, see them ask me about their room and, like, what can they add and what can they change because, like, they have kind of got into the mindset that, like, nothing is too permanent to change, and so I think that that is what I like the most about being kind of wild and crazy in a powder bathroom is because it's like it's so small you can change it, like it's
Right.
okay.
Well,
So
I love the way you describe homes as a space. Like I think even myself, like I don't consider myself a homebody, but
yeah.
I prefer to be at my home, like above anywhere else, above a restaurant, a party, an event, a travel. I do prefer to be at my home, and I'll find myself, um, especially in my 20s where I didn't care where I lived.
Right.
But I always seem, I say that, but I was never in like a really dull, stale, clinical, clean, like a perfect place that was just like everything's white, everything's a straight line. There was always these really bizarre places, like condemned homes and living above a bar or living in somebody's attic, where when I look back on it, you know, I with this subconsciously, it was clearly very important to me that I was in some sort of what other people might perceive as to be like a wild place. But for
Yeah.
me, it brought me, it inspired me. And
Yeah.
if nothing else, it made me feel calm and cool and comfortable. Um,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people miss that part. I think they forget that they can do that with their home, and it doesn't have to be with the fanciest, finishes or the fanciest lights or the best rugs or the best. It could be kind of whatever
Yeah.
you want it to be. And I love that you describe homes as palettes. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. So I think a lot of people imagine that you just have like this HGTV life. You're just going around all day just looking at pretty shit and picking things out and making these badass decisions and just building these cool pieces
Yeah,
of art essentially. But we both know that that at the end of the day, it's construction,
it's
right? It's a bunch of
construction.
dirty people on site
Yep,
moving heavy things and driving nails into wood.
yep.
There is a wild aspect to this of an uncontrollable variable anytime a project happens. So what are some of the shitty things about this job, the stuff that you're like, man, I wish we could just get through this. This is my least favorite part, but it's just part of the job. What's some stuff that people maybe don't realize?
There's a lot of coordination that goes into home building. And it's that non-glamorous side of, you know, there are so many decisions that need to be made, and so many times that it's cold, it's rainy, it's muddy, it's hot, it's rain, like, and you need to be on site because it is construction. I do think that there is maybe this misconception that it's like, oh, I'm more like a designer. I am a designer, but in the construction world. And, Harvard isn't building $10 million, $6 million homes. We are building, like I said, more of that urban family. So it's more of the coordination of all the things. I think the thing that blows my mind the most is the petty theft that happens in construction, and just like the dog eat dog of the subcontractor world. Um, I can't tell you, I mean, and we do a lot to protect, and it is definitely one of those, kind of comes with the nature of the territory, but having locks cut off and sheets of plywood stolen, having windows stolen, having copper cut out of AC units, like having appliances taken, it's really frustrating because I'm just like, we're all trying to do the same thing here to, get along. And
Yeah.
so I think the petty theft is the one thing that I really can't stand the most, you know, but I will say, without sounding like everything is just so perfect and wonderful, Harvard is really fun, and we have a lot of really great things that go on, that it is almost difficult for me to really talk about the things that are challenging because of how much I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Working alongside Juan is really been really cool to see our relationship evolve. We've been working together for 7 years, and we've learned so much about what each other expect in certain things. And he brings a lot of construction knowledge and information that help my designs, and then he also helps me bring my designs to life. And it's almost hard to kind of talk about like what I don't like. I mean, the city of Houston, it also has its, it's
Yeah.
it's ups and downs. Centerpoint probably gets the worst version of me, but here we are.
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
yeah,
Okay. Well, last question. And again,
yeah,
thank you for spending some
of
time,
course, of course.
just letting us get a peek inside of
Yeah.
Harvard homes, and of course, your approach to everything. So I've got $10,000.
Okay, right.
And
Let's do it.
I want a whole new house. Like I want everything to look
Yeah.
awesome. What, but there's a lot of people like I'll admit, like we came to you, I don't know, was it 3, 4, 5 months ago?
Yeah.
We were ready to spend 30 grand, right? Let's call it. And
What did I tell you?
you sent me basically one email with a response to some of my questions. And, I make a joke about it now, but you saved us tens of thousands of dollars. And all we really did was like, we didn't paint anything. We got
Yep.
new chairs for our dining room table, and we moved where my piano was. So you could argue that we basically moved some furniture around per your suggestions, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, you know, uh, so what would you tell people who are like, all I have is $5,000, but I
Yeah.
want to change something about my home so that I feel better when I'm here? What would you tell that person?
I think that the first thing to identify is what isn't working.
Okay.
You know, like you my living room, it's not serving the purpose. Okay, what isn't there's not enough seating. Okay, well that's one issue. It doesn't have flow. That's a different issue. It's so dark. That's a different issue. And so I think that if you can identify like what you're trying to achieve, it's much easier to discern where the money should be allocated.
Okay.
And I'm going to kind of go back to one of my previous statements about moving things around and being open to change and not feeling that the moment that you place your stuff on the ground in your house is where it has to stay.
Right.
And, you know, sometime, I mean, I'm guilty of this. My sweet Michael has moved a hotel room around. Any kind of a VRBO that we go to, I'm also rearranging the furniture for just a better flow because it's walkways, it's sight lines. You know, sometimes people just by instinct want to push everything to the outside and then the room feels really small. But if you kind of push it in and create some good walk spaces, all of a sudden the room feels so much larger.
Okay.
So I mean, let's say that you are living, we'll use a couple different scenarios. I'm living in a, you know, 2012 build and 77018, and I have $10,000. I haven't done a single thing since my builder turned over the keys to me. I would probably change out the kitchen island pendants and the hardware because that's where everybody hangs out.
Okay.
So what rooms are off of that? If it's the family room, I'd also change out the hardware and the fixtures in the family room. If it's also the dining room, I would change out the dining room light.
Okay.
Because most times they're a builder grade light. Okay, let's say you live in a 2015 build and you have really nice light fixtures. I would add wallpaper, add paneling, add paint, add a ceiling detail, whether it's in the dining room, whether it's in your study. And then the last thing that I would probably say is usually it's furniture.
Okay.
You know, and I understand that this is not Harvard's wheelhouse because we are 100, like we are construction. I am not furniture, but as somebody, like I work with a designer with Jennifer Barron. We've done 4 projects together. It's awesome. I don't know how she does what she does because I could never do it. She says the same thing, but I think that it's scale of furniture and quality. I think, you know, I'll speak for myself as a mom of young kids, boys especially. I was always very nervous about buying nicer furniture.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found that if I buy nicer furniture with the proper fabrics, that they actually last longer and look better for longer than the stuff that I bought that was cheap. That I'm like, oh, well, when it's gross, I'll just throw it away. Why did I have that mentality? Like, I'm also not raising animals, I'm raising humans. So, like, maybe I just implement some boundaries and say, okay, if we're going to eat something, we eat over here where, you know, this is very food and drink friendly. But in here, like, we just lounge with, you know, blankets. And yes, I mean, there's going to be in the occasional booger on the sofa that I'm like, okay, wow. But, you know, quality of furniture and rugs, I really think help high traffic areas feel less trafficked. And I do think that, you know, homeowners in general, when they dislike their space, it's when the traffic shows, you know. I'm not saying you need custom upholstery and all of these, but there are definitely, you know, kind of understanding like what makes a good sofa. Is it, you know, is the frame made out of solid wood or is it MDF? You know, we're Houstonians, we're big people. My kids also jump on everything. So like, you know, I don't want something that's going to start to sag over time because, you know, they've been bouncing on the sofa, but I also don't want to tell them to stop bouncing on the sofa. They're kids, like they should bounce on my sofa.
Yeah.
So, you know, my biggest thing is always like, you know, invest in the things that are important. If furniture is not important, then like don't spend the money on it. If homes are not important, don't spend the money on it. Just because your neighbor has it doesn't mean that you need to have it either.
Yeah.
You know, and so I am like unapologetically who I am. Most people who know me well know that about me. And, I'm like, if you don't like it, then I don't really care. And I mean that in a really sincere way too. Um, so yeah, that would be my best advice.
I love
For,
it.
okay.
Love it. Beth, that's all I
So
got. I appreciate your
thanks, man.
time. I know
Of
it's going to be,
course.
Harvard's got a big year and we're all excited to
You
see it.
too.
And
Awesome.
I will talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks.